So what does it mean that I shave my own head? I mean,
Ooh.
Well,
maybe it's that no man's land. It's that middle.
yeah, it's just for my family, they all bald, like, right on top, so then they shave it eventually.
If
My poor brother, younger brother, is losing it on top.
If
And he
I
used to have
had-
the big afro, I'm like, oh, poor boy.
I will tell you, if I had male pattern baldness, I wouldn't buzz it. I would shave it in the shower every day. I would just be bald.
I was like, I respect the shave.
It really comes down to laziness. I don't want to comb it.
Well, Corey, I don't know if you were going to do this, but by way of quick introduction, Corey Smith, previous president and founder of Tree Media.
Well, I've always, not previous founder, but.
Well, right, you were always the founder, previous president, back in the game. Also the number 2 HubSpot trainer in Idaho,
Sure.
or were you the first?
I don't know.
Okay, well, you and Lindsay shared one.
Lindsay and I, we got certified about the same time. So there was, like at the very beginning, there was only 30 trainers in the entire world at the beginning, and Lindsay and I both were the only 2 in the same agency that were part of that group. Yeah.
How old is HubSpot?
They started in '07. And the only reason why I know that is because it's the same year we started.
I was going to say that.
And we don't have quite as much revenue as they do.
What?
But we still support them anyways, and we love their tools, so.
Yeah. And I have a couple of certifications, so I try and stay on top of those.
So yeah, today is on workflows and automation, yeah?
Yeah.
Got some fun things to share.
Yeah, I thought, are we just jumping into it? That's
Yeah.
it? We're just going right into.
Yeah, that was my segue.
There's Haley. Skylar's here. She can't talk to us, but she can hear you.
Well, so what's really nice about this is that we can say bad things about Skylar, and she can't.
Take me back.
Say anything.
Should I just close the chat so you can't see her?
Yeah, that sounds about right. So we can't hear you, but we can read you. So what I thought we'd do today, and we're going to have to make sure we watch that chat to answer these questions. I thought about creating an actual presentation, but I thought, well, that's just kind of boring. I do have an idea of what we could do of building a workflow together, but I thought before we do anything like that, let's just kind of talk for a moment about either A, what workflows you use, or B, what you would like to learn, and then we can kind of craft the discussion around that. So at BRT, do you use workflows?
I haven't yet, but I'm
They're
going
still in
to.
their onboarding.
Yes.
Oh, you're just still right.
Yeah.
You're brand new, shiny.
Sorry, I know, that's not very helpful for this.
No, it's perfect, because we can do that. Skylar, I'm gonna have you practice moving your fingers on the keyboard. What kind of automations have you done, or is there anything specific you would like to learn?
If she's answering that, be thinking about maybe some like repetitive internal or external emails that maybe you guys send, or like follow-ups or things that like maybe we could take off your plate through automation, things like that.
Something like save the date for our tire side chat, since they'll be like monthly and stuff, that'd be like, hey, this is, it might change a little bit because the topics change, but,
Okay.
things like that.
So email automation so far. Now, Skylar, when you talk about email, are you talking about like drip campaigns, or are you talking about just the follow-up automation in your emails? And hopefully that question makes sense, because it'll be slow going if I got to drip. Okay. So email automation is a perfect place to start, and I think it aligns pretty well with what you're thinking. And I think email is also probably the most common kind of automation out there. There are lots of automations. So the simplest automation that HubSpot has is when you create an email that you send out. When you have a form, it can automatically send an email as a follow-up message. Okay. And years ago, we would have to actually manually go and create the automation. Someone fills out a form, sends this email, but now, in fact, it's simple enough that I don't even think we need to spend time on it, because once you go into the creating your form, it gives you the option, do you want to set up automation or not.
Gotcha, that's kind of what, instead of the then break, maybe register and then thank you for registering, here's the details of that.
Yeah, yeah, so the way Eventbrite does that is a perfect example. We can do that with HubSpot. And the nice thing about HubSpot is that automation works very well, even if you have to put the form on another site. So, like, you know, it has the embed form option. You have the option to put that form elsewhere. The automation will still work just fine. So I'm going to jump in and share my screen to just a couple of things. We'll do a high-level thing, and then, Skylar, hopefully this isn't too boring for you, since some of this you may already know. The automation tools are pretty cool. You've got, now sequences are on the sales side, so if you don't have sales, you have to have Sales Hub Pro, I think. I think the starter doesn't even have sequences, is that right?
Correct.
Yeah, so if you don't have Sales Pro, this will be locked out, but that's a pretty cool automation that, I probably need to hit share. Is that,
Yeah.
is that helpful?
I thought it was just
Generally.
Ed that was in the way, but then I realized, no, you're not actually sharing.
No, let's see, let's just do the entire screen. And that's probably also, ooh, the infinite loop. This probably also makes it easier for Skylar to see what we're talking about. So under automation, these sequences are only available for Sales Pro subscribers. And it's a pretty cool automation for sales, but it's only worth it if your sales team actually uses it, which is hard to get salespeople to do anything in a CRM.
Well, we don't have sales, so.
There are some pretty cool, and that could be another really cool discussion in a future Hug event, because there are ways to use that and some really cool ways to think about one-to-one automations from a customer support perspective, but that's for another day. So if you have HubSpot Marketing Pro, you have all of these workflows, these options that you can now create some automations.
Can you increase like your screen size at all for those of us in the back?
You asked me so much. I've only been back for a couple of weeks, and here you are making.
I was just envisioning like the plus sign up in the.
Now let's do this though. Let's see that. That might work. Does that help?
Mm-hmm.
Yep. Okay. So we won't go through any of these. I mean, we've got lots and lots of things. 25, I guess we have 25 or 30 or so. We do have, I mean, I've had some clients where we've had hundreds of automations. The problem with too many automations is sometimes you forget what automations you have. What I thought we would do is let's just set up a real simple email drip automation, okay? And there's a lot of ways that we can trigger an email drip. So the most common way is someone fills out a form, and then we send them an email, more than just a confirmation email, right? We might send them a sequence of 10 emails. So you fill out a form for an event you're having, and you want to give them information leading up to that event, okay? Maybe it's a string of 5 emails over the course of 5 days. So you close out your event registration 5 days in advance. And let's say the event is on Friday, so on Monday, you send them a confirmation. On Tuesday, you send them, please watch this video to prepare. On Wednesday, you say, please read this blog post. On Thursday, you remind them one point and give them a little bit more information. On Friday, you do one more reminder. So that's a pretty simple kind of a drip workflow. But it can be triggered based on event registration if you have it tied to Eventbrite. It could be tied to just registering, like filling out a form. It could even be tied, if we know them in the system because they've filled out forms before, it could be tied once they visit a page. So for example, if they fill out a form today, and then 3 months from now in the same browser, they visit a certain page, you can actually trigger a workflow that sends them an email that says, hey, I noticed you visited this page. Here's some more information. or you can trigger different even internal notifications based on those kinds of things, right? So we're just going to create a real simple workflow, and I would always recommend that as you are learning workflows that you start from a template. It makes things a whole lot easier. Now, at this point, I tend to be a little hypocritical, and I would bet, Katie, you are too in this. You probably don't use templates as much as you used to. Once you start understanding how it works, the templates actually make it a little more complicated, I think. But you're probably kind of the same way at this point, Madison. But I would recommend that as you're learning, start with a template. It's really a great way to start. So,
and to be fair, when we all started, there were no such things as templates.
Yeah.
So we had to do it from scratch, so we're almost more comfortable doing it that way.
Yeah. But if the templates always work, never be afraid to use the templates, right? And there are quite a few in here, right? So here we mentioned, you know, they visited a page. Now, it does require that they fill out a form so we know them at some point, right? Re-engagement email to cold leads. In fact, we're going to just start one of these. Let's just use one of these. Send a welcome email to new customers. How's this one sound? Does that sound good? So let's just use this one. Okay, I got it. Okay, now the way all automations work is you start with a trigger, and then you have it do a thing, okay? So something has to trigger the event. You can add in, we won't go to it in this, you have goals that, you know, if they meet a certain goal, it will automatically eject them, which is kind of a rude way of saying it. It'll kind of automatically remove them from the workflow. So let's say, for example, you have 5 emails over the course of 10 days you're sending them with the goal to have them schedule an appointment, or with the goal to have them visit a certain page or do something like that. If they do that thing, it will automatically pull them out of the workflow so they don't keep getting reminders to do that same thing. And so those are goals, and it does take a little bit of kind of thinking through, so we won't spend time on that. But we will have to, even when you got templates, you will have to still think about what are the triggers and what are the things that you want to do. So in this case, this trigger by default uses a life cycle stage. So now this presupposes that when a person becomes a customer, that you either manually switch them to the life cycle stage of customer, or there is some other automation that makes them a customer. Now, I will say, a lot of small automations tend to be better than one big automation, okay? So, and you can also use automations to trigger other automations, to call up other automations. And the reason why that's important is if you have too many things that are all automated, then you have to look in a lot of places to fix things. But if you kind of think through, how am I going to build these automations so they're simple? And so this is a really, really nice example of that, okay? So I'm gonna trigger this, and this person, once they become in the life cycle stage as a customer, then it'll set a delay. For things like a property that is changing, it could be the life cycle stage is changing, it could be we know their email exists, or their company name has been added, or whatever it is that we decide. I always like to send at least a 5-minute delay or even a 10-minute delay. I like to do that for 2 reasons. One reason is it gives us a little safety measure, because sometimes it takes all of the database stuff to populate the way it's supposed to. And what you don't want is, if you're putting personalization tokens in those emails, you don't want, like the first name, you don't want to not know their name, and if it took some time. So that 5 minutes gives all of the elves in the back office time to put the data in the right spot. The other reason why I like to give it a delay is to give it a little bit of an appearance that this might actually be a manual kind of a thing. Maybe someone actually did type that email. And even when someone knows it's automated, that delay actually still gives a little bit of a psychological boost, okay? So I like the idea of a delay, and you can, I can edit this if I want and change it to whatever makes sense, right? I can change it to hours or minutes or whatever I choose. If I wanted to send another email after this, I could add an additional delay, and then the next email, so we can continue to add those, okay? I can even create a branch of, well, if they filled out if they're a customer and they bought one category of products, I can send one email. Or if they're a customer, I can send a different email. Or I can create that email in such a way that it says different things, okay? So for our case, we're just going to send this one email. Well, we need to choose an email, okay? So I can go find an email that I already created. In the early days, if you didn't have an email here, you had to go out and create it. There was no option to create a new email. But I can create a new email if I want. In our case, I'm just going to use this one right from the top just because it's easy, okay? And then I'm going to hit save. So now I've got the most basic of automation that works really, really well, okay? Our trigger could be manual, okay? We don't have to have an automated trigger. We could create this, I could delete this, and I can make this a manual kind of a thing. Because we're connected to Eventbrite, you can have your Eventbrite registration here. You can do Zoom components here. There's a lot of ways that we can do it.
So we can do the thing where if they register on Eventbrite, then this would immediately go to the 5-minute delay.
Yeah, whatever delay you choose, yeah.
Awesome.
So that's a pretty cool way to think about this. And so yes, we're still using that template, but we're just changing the trigger. So we can say, okay, for Eventbrite, I go find the trigger of the field or whatever it is, and I've got all these options to choose from. So when the age is equal to, or when real simple, it could be when, let's find an email address. We don't have, that's not here because their emails will be required, but let's just do name. Let's just say first name is known. All I have to do is know that there was a first name that exists. So when that registration hits and there's a first name, which presumably everybody's going to have a first name, I would hope, right?
Yeah, I think.
Especially if you make it required on
It's
the
required.
Eventbrite side, then you could say, all right, when that registration has a first name, and we can send, you can figure out which event and things like that. There's a lot of ways you can set up this trigger. Then it will then trigger after 7 minutes that thank you for registering. You can even, and there's a lot of ways that you can set it up. You can have, instead of a delay, you can have the action be a certain amount of time before an event. So instead of sending all of our emails based on the day they enroll in the workflow, I can actually say, all right, my event is on June 1st, 3 days before I want this, 2 days before I want that, or the morning of I want this, right? And I think the hardest part about setting up workflows is just having the imagination to think about what can it do. The chances are pretty darn high that if you can do it manually, you can probably figure out a way to do it automatically, okay? Because it can pull data from your database, it can pull and it can pull information from a variety of areas. Your email can have personalization tokens. There's smart, they call it smart text, is that what they still call it?
Personalization.
Well, no, the personalization token, but like we used to call it smart text. Smart rules is what they call it, okay? So smart rules, so the email itself can have rules that say, if this information is present, then give them this text. If that information is present, give them something different, okay? So if you registered for one event out of two, or one class or one ticket, give them this. If you register for the other, give them this. But if you register for both, you can add both information. Now, what I like about the smart rules in an email instead of here is all those rules are contained right in the email. I don't have to create 2 or 3 different emails. Because I could, if I wanted, I could set up another trigger, which is my if-then branch, right? And so then I could say, oops, I have to go to this first. So let's do first name, oops, let's just call this name branch, just for simplicity. So if it's known, we're going to do one thing, and then if nothing is meant, which means if it's unknown, it goes somewhere else. So now, whatever the thing is, we could send one email here, and I could come over here, and I could add send email, and I could choose a different email, for example. So I can either do that here as a branch, or I can use smart rules in the email and not have a branch.
Okay.
And a lot of that's just going to depend on what way you think of the process more easily, right? Different people have different ways that they can think about it. I am less inclined to think about smart rules because for me personally, it's harder to visualize. So I like to have 2 different emails. But when you have 2 different emails, it now increases the number of emails you have in your system. So there's that disadvantage, right? So it just depends on what makes most sense for the way you want to do it. We have a charity that we work for that has all sorts of chapters across the country. And so their if-then branch is, if it's this one chapter, when a contact form comes in, send this person a notification. But if it's the next chapter, send this person a notification. So we have one form and a series of branches that send that person.
Over like 200 branches, fun fact.
We're actually over 300 now.
Yeah.
It's huge. So that is automation in a nutshell. I don't want to overload you with a whole lot of stuff, but Katie, you've been working in automations a really long time.
Yeah.
Anything you want to add, or?
Yeah, I would say probably good to just review all the different types of actions you can take. So if
Okay.
you just want to hit a plus icon, maybe we can just review.
Yeah. So I'll just hit it down here at the end.
Yeah. So yeah, these are all the different things you can do kind of like in between or set like the tasks to do within your automation. So obviously we have the delays at the top, so you can see if they're like delay until an event happens. Workflow, you can have your workflow at the very bottom and roll them into another workflow. Like, okay, you did all these things, like let's call it an onboarding workflow. All right, you completed this workflow, you met this criteria, now I want you to actually go into like our new client first 90 days workflow. So you can kind of set up some automation to send them somewhere else. We talked about if-then branches a little bit. You can do it to send internal and external communication. So not only if someone fills out a content download form, you can then set up, like with the plus icon, hitting send internal email notification, let your sales team or your marketing team know this contact downloaded this piece of content on this page, maybe follow up with like a personalized email or something like that.
So could you be like, if it comes from a certain email address, like a certain company, and they were checking out like our CityGo benefits, then it would refer to, like, I'd be like, okay, they clicked on that, I'm going to have them send an email to Kathy.
Yeah, the
Yeah.
easiest way to do that is do it based on the contact owner.
Okay.
So you would make sure that all of your contacts, all of your companies have an owner. When a new contact comes in with
Oh,
the
you
same.
can set a contact for a company? Like,
Yeah. So what's really cool is if your contact company, your company record has an owner, and a new person comes in with the right domain name and company name, that person then becomes automatically assigned to the same contact owner as the company.
Mm-hmm.
And then takes that magic 2 or 3 minutes, that's why the 5-minute delay,
Right.
that you can then send a notification to simply the owner. So rather than creating a bunch of workflows for all the different potential companies that come in. You just simply create one workflow that says when information comes in meeting these criteria, send a notification to the contact owner.
Cool, okay.
The other thing I think about those internal emails is they're not the fancy email marketing emails that you'd create. It's just a notification.
Right.
Because it doesn't need to be special. It doesn't need to be, it's just a HubSpot notification. And so it simplifies that process quite a bit.
One that we like to use a lot is we use Slack here at Tribute, and so sending Slack notifications when someone meets a certain criteria, or goes through a workflow or just hits a certain milestone. You can also set it up to create tasks for yourself within the workflow. So if someone, again, downloads a piece of content or comes to your fireside chat or tireside chat, like, you can just create, again, internal tasks for you to follow up in some way.
Okay.
You can do it to delete a contact. So maybe, like, if the IP address is known and it's like from India or China or something like that, you can have a workflow to delete those contacts to help keep your contacts
That's
down.
actually a relatively new.
Yeah,
I didn't know that was a.
Yeah, so it used to
We have that
be,
workflow.
so yeah, it's probably only been the last year or so, you could, maybe a couple of years. It used to be that what we would do is mark it as ready for deletion. So we'd create a workflow to mark it for deletion, and then we'd go to a list and then manually delete. So they just added that. And then it should be noted that some of these things are unique to the services that we subscribe to, and some of these things are unique to the integrations that we've done. Like Slack wouldn't exist unless you've done the Slack integration,
Right.
right?
So we use Teams, there's not an integration.
Probably.
with Teams?
Yeah, I bet there is. HubSpot.
Because we do like tasks and things like that, similar to Slack.
Yeah, I would bet.
Skylar, go ahead and drop some questions in there if you want to, while we're doing this.
No,
yeah.
My personal one.
So it's not possible to do a personal version of Microsoft Teams. And you have to, it's one-to-one, so one install of Microsoft Teams to one HubSpot. Now, I don't know exactly what it means by data center, but yeah, so you could go in and add, and then once you've added it, so the way you would add it is, let's see if I can just show you how to get there. Is you'll come up here to the little gear icon up at the top right, and then on the left, we've got, right over here, we've got those integrations, and then connected apps, and then you can search. So we'll have to go to that marketplace. You go to the marketplace. If you don't have it already there, you go to the marketplace, go through the steps to integrate it, and then whatever it's capable of doing will then become available wherever it's capable of working. So.
Okey-doke.
So I think those are just common examples of different types of tasks you can do.
Anything else that we, so
Add
lists. Using a static list versus an active list, there are some really cool use cases for both. So this is kind of a nice thing. Ads is probably only because we have the ads component, I would guess.
Yeah.
So you may not.
Property management is nice for internal workflows. Like, we have like an offboarding kind of workflow that we do, where it's like if a client cancels, then we basically clear off a bunch of proproperties. And so instead of having to do that manually, we just hit like the clear property value of current client.
And it sends them a hate mail for not trusting us any longer, those kinds of things.
Yeah.
Oh, good.
You know how it works.
I know where you live.
Yeah. Yeah, so
Here's a link to sign back up.
Yep, so those are all the different actions. I would say also another good thing to know is the settings. Madison and I were just talking about setting options earlier. You can make it so these workflows only enroll at specific times. It's like for us, we only want some things to be going during business hours, because like we don't want our delay from Thursday to then all of a sudden send an email on Saturday, because that doesn't feel very human. Like, we want that to wait until the next business day.
Or even for that matter, because our office is closed on Friday, we don't want to send late Thursday night or Friday morning.
Yeah.
Because then if they reach out because of it.
They know we're not.
Yeah, but even then, if it's something to contact us, and then,
Oh, wait.
why did you send me an email if you're not gonna answer the phone or not gonna respond to the email or something like that?
So yeah, I can set up specific times for it to actually enroll or whatever. Enrollment and suppression, this is, I'm gonna contact no longer missing. Sorry, you clicked on it very unexpectedly.
did I surprise you?
You did surprise
Do
me.
you want me to come back here?
I wasn't prepared to talk
and
about
say,
enrollment.
Now I'm going to click on unenrollment and
No,
suppression.
stay here.
Okay.
Okay, so obviously you can tie your workflow to a campaign, so like when you're in your campaign analytics tool, you can see how this workflow is contributing to that. On goals, this is where you probably want to set up a goal for your workflow.
Can I just talk about the unenrollment?
He wants to
suppression?
finish the settings tab.
You don't need to talk.
I was just asking for more stuff, but so this is, there are reasons why you might want to unenroll someone from a workflow, particularly if there are sales workflows. So let's think about, if you have a customer that you're working towards, a contact that you're working towards being a customer, as just a contact, you might send them sales information of, sign up for, this, that, or the other thing, right? But then once they're flipped to customer, whatever that flip is that you
don't want
choose,
to send anything.
you want to send them different things. So once they enter this workflow for new customers, it can automatically remove them from other workflows, rather than wondering if they're part of it or not.
That's smart, so we could definitely use that for like City Go, be like, okay, we're gonna, we're trying to go get them to be members, and then once they are, we'll switch them over to,
Yeah.
hey, now use your benefits for these things.
Quit sending City Go brand stuff, start sending beer
Yeah.
stuff, yeah.
And in suppression list, maybe there's a reason why someone shouldn't be part of this, so you can actually suppress them so that no matter what the trigger says, if they're on this list,
They won't go into.
they won't go in the workflow. Yeah. All right, now, if you want to talk about goals, you can talk about goals.
Well, it's almost kind of like the same as like a suppression list in terms of like if someone's already met that criteria. So like a goal is like, say if Skylar's creating this content automation workflow, and if someone finally goes to the page and fills out the form in order to talk to a salesperson that she wants, then you can unenroll them by setting up that goal so they don't keep getting those future emails, kind of like how we were talking about earlier. But goals are just kind of important just to kind of, for admin purposes, they don't keep getting things you don't want. Changes, we click on that.
Mm-hmm.
This is probably not gonna show us any changes, but it's really nice because there's like revision data. So you can see like, especially going back to the whole SHP charity thing, like when you have that many chapters and there are that many people in HubSpot, it can get very messy. And so when a workflow stops working, you can kind of go back to like the last revision or see like what types of changes are made or make comments. You have a little comment bar over there. You can like start leaving comments about what you've done.
Yeah, in fact, I'll give you a really good use case, something Lindsay and I were working on about a year ago for for Harvest Ministries. The big challenge that they had was they had so many workflows and they had no idea what they were going to. They were integrated with other systems. And so the primary way that Lindsay was working through that before she handed them off to me was she would go look in histories, property histories, workflow histories, what were they triggering, what was being changed, so that she could start to isolate which workflows were safe to turn off, which properties were safe to ignore and delete and things like that. So these revision histories are very, very helpful, whether it's here or properties, contact records, properties of company records. It's pretty cool.
Just another great thing is like, it will basically show you all the things you need to fix before you turn it on. So review and publish up there is how you would obviously turn on your workflow. And then it'll be like, make sure you review these 5 things first, and you're missing this one thing. But it also just kind of gives you this like, okay, do you want existing contacts who meet this criteria to go ahead and get enrolled? More often than not, you probably don't.
Otherwise, they're going to get this new email. They could have been a customer.
Yeah,
5
for
years ago.
years, right.
Yeah.
So it just makes it look
So
like-
usually you would say, no, don't enroll them. There may be some reasons why you would want to.
Yeah,
Right.
same with re-enrollment. You don't often want people to get re-enrolled, unless maybe it is like a content drip and they re-downloaded the buyer persona worksheet or whatever piece of content, like that would be a use case for maybe doing that. But again, like you don't.
Yeah, and so Skylar, you asked, love to learn more about content automation. There's a lot of ways to think about what content automation is. The most common would be, I want to fill out a form to download a piece of content, and you might, generally speaking, you would just say, the thank you page shows that content. But what if that person downloaded it and then left that page and then somehow like deleted it or whatever the case might be? So it gives you an option, if you would like, from an automation perspective, I can now send them an email with the download link as well, that they can save. Does a few things. One is, it validates that the email is accurate, gives them the content that they're expecting, but also I can now do additional content drips associated with that. So 3 days later, I could send them an email that says, hey, how did it go? Would love to get your feedback, and you can have it come from, say, the contact owner. So, and then if there's no contact owner, it could go to a default person. So let's say, for instance, in a sales organization, you don't have salespeople, but you're going to have people in equivalent kinds of roles, right? So let's say the person's, is John, and you could have the email come as if John sent it. And then when the person hits reply to give feedback, it would automatically go to John. Now, when you put people in your office in those workflows, I highly recommend you tell them what the workflows are.
Yes.
Because they could very well be confused. Well, I didn't send you this email. Why is this coming? But,
Yeah.
yeah.
Better to over-communicate with
Yeah.
certain people.
And then the other thing I would recommend in situations like that is simplify the template. It could even be just a text-only template, so that it doesn't feel so marketing. It feels more like a personal email from someone. Because it's coming from marketing, it will still have the unsubscribe link at the bottom, but you can bury that way at the bottom. And yeah, let's see, I didn't touch it long enough. It went to sleep. Let's see. Share, there it goes.
So Corey, if you're cool with it, I'll share this one link with you to a workflow.
Okay.
Kind of like show them some different possibilities of what's, a couple different things. So this is an example of like our 90-day intro workflow for new clients. So my enrollment trigger up at the top is current client equals any of yes. Monthly budget is known. There's a couple more. Like basically just very like defined criteria for when.
In fact, let me show you what it looks like
Yeah,
over
there you
here.
go.
So it's got these ands. So it has to meet all of these criteria. So if any one of those is missing, it won't go.
Right.
Now, the more you have, the greater risk you have of never triggering it.
Right.
So it does take a little bit of thought of what am I really trying to accomplish, right? It wouldn't be hard at all when, I'm assuming, Katie, you're the one who built this? I mean, it wouldn't have been hard when Katie was building this to get just one too many criteria in there, and it never works.
Right.
So it does require.
And you can go back and edit those.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah,
Right.
yeah.
And you can test the criteria.
Like, will anybody actually fit? So, yeah, so you can test them.
And then you can see down there, like as soon as all those things happen, basically once a contract is signed, like that's when that happens. Set the company property of the years of the client to 0, because I like to know like how long like our client's been with us, and so I can filter then by clients who've been with us for 3 years versus 2 versus 5. Then I have a delay of 2 hours to then send like the new marketing client welcome email, like it's an onboarding email. Then 2 days later, they get to like learn how to get support through Tribute Media. 7 days later, tips of working with us to kind of like help set us up for success. You can see how many companies are in every action. So right now, like we have one client who signed up with us in the last 21 days. So they're in this delay right now in between their tips with working with Tribute and the next email, which is free resources. So marketing and dev resources. 37 days later, I have an internal notification to send to me to schedule a 90-day Q&A to the client delight team, because you can assign different users within HubSpot to certain teams. And so I want everyone within that team to get that email. Kind of holds us all accountable. 30 days later, again, another company. And then finally, after 90 days, there's the 90-day client survey. So all those delays have added up to 90 days. Then they get an email with a form, just like, how are we doing? And then based on their response, because I have like a between 1 and 10, how are we doing? I have all these if-then branches. So if their assessment of services is between 1 and 6, it sends me an email being like, this person hates you, you're the worst. Like, and then it sends an email to the salesperson to be like, hey, they're not happy, you should really get in front of this. If it's an assessment of services between 7 and 8, then it's like, cool, they're a brand advocate. It sends that to me and the company owner. If it's better than that, then great, they're now a fan, it's updates their company property to say that they're a fan of us, and it sends me an email letting me know they're happy. If they don't respond, then I have a sales to follow-up email, that gets assigned to the company owner. So, a couple of different ways you can use it, yeah.
Now, I will say that workflows like this are, well, but they're almost never used, and I think to the detriment of the organization, and they're never used to the detriment of the client, right? So when we think about the buyer's journey is, you first gain a little bit of awareness, then you start to consider your options, and then you make a decision. And too often we forget that there's a fourth step, and that is delight. We want to delight our client so they do more things. When we have workflows like this, and we put some really significant thought and effort into what does it look like to really delight that client and make sure that client is set up for clear success, then clients are more likely to stay with us longer. They're more likely to utilize our services in the way that we've intended to, and in a way that's going to set them up for great success. So workflows like this do take a bit of forethought, as you can imagine. What do I really want this to look like over the course of 90 days or 60 days or 180 days, whatever it is? And then what are you going to do if they don't do the thing, or if they do the thing differently? What are those exceptions? But these kinds of things, I don't care what industry you're in, really do some positive things for your relationships with your customers.
Yeah, no, I can definitely see that would be helpful.
Yeah.
Because like we don't have anything, and we have like one email that goes out, like, thanks for sending the video version, and that's it. And then it'd be nice to have like reminder things. It's like, okay, we're adding this or this,
Yeah, totally.
Or you have someone that signs up for one of your tire side chats, and they come, and they get a thank you, and then they don't hear from you.
Yeah.
Is you kind of,
What
get the chance
value
to,
add over
yeah, what other value? can
Yeah, I
add?
don't know if
already
you
have
noticed,
this stuff.
there was,
Yeah.
one of the triggers was that you attended an event.
Yeah, and there could be other triggers like, oh, they've attended 3 or 4 of these events by signing
Good,
up, and
yeah.
then you're like, hey, you've attended 4 events from Tireside. Come to this special blah, blah, blah.
We're,
or
we're looking
whatever.
at a very specific thing.
Yeah, you're really only
Please give us
limited
feedback form.
by the data that's available to you. And if the data is not available as a base in the system, then you can create a property and automate that data being in the system. And a perfect example of that is this one, right? So this is a custom property that Katie built, and we now have a workflow component that gives us that data, okay?
So I could be like, okay, so that property has never attended a Tireside chat before, and that's like only the first one, and they would get into that system.
Mhm.
So that would be a property I would have to make.
Yep, and then
once
just,
they had an you can have a workflow that says once they attended an event, because they're checked in on Eventbrite, it adds that to 1. The next time they do it, it bumps it to 2.
Increase property value.
Increase
by
property
1.
value by 1, 2.
Would be the action on, right?
Okay, so then you could do the sub things, okay. Well, maybe that would be too much, right? Or
You'd have,
first timers.
you'd have 2 separate workflows.
2 workflows.
yeah, I'm assuming, Katie, you have a separate workflow that triggers that after 365 days, after 1 year.
And
it
then I have a
increases it by
workflow
1.
that it's like, if yours is client is 1, go to this action. If it's 2, go to this action. It's like you get different things, like your loyalty, which would be media essentially. So that's why that property is important, because like every 365 days, then that property gets increased by 1 if they're still a
And then
current
they
client.
are automatically moved into that other workflow that you set up.
So you'd have, this one that sets it, and then your second one in the background that you never look at that says 365 days, or every time they're checked in, it does this, and then you could branch different things based off that set of data.
Yeah, okay, cool. That'd be nice to keep track of how many people attended how many Tiresides.
Yeah.
And now that you know all of these possibilities, you're gonna be thinking about this.
For 2 days, and come with all the questions.
I was like, I just need a lot of like paper, I think.
Yeah.
Whiteboards will be your best friend, for
Yeah.
sure.
Yeah, or like Post-it notes that you can start putting things and just kind of visualize it
Moving around.
on paper
I
first.
like
You
that.
should have seen Katie building these workflows. It was the whiteboard in there and boxes were everywhere.
the
go ahead.
workflow, can you set that to like a workflow for like a static list, or is it just through emails that get?
So you
triggered
could,
with it?
so if you think about the trigger could be that they're in a static list. But you just have to then figure out, well, how are they gonna get into that static list?
Right.
And you could have a workflow that adds them there. It could be a manual effort from
But-
people.
It could be also attached to like an active list, right?
Yeah.
And so the moment they got added to that particular
Yep.
active list, they would get into this workflow?
Yeah, the nice thing about the active list is that kind of has a built-in automation.
Yeah.
Whenever that triggers that active list, suddenly they're there. And you just make sure that the settings for the re-enrollment, settings are, view enrollments. This one's a little different than the other. It's because it's an older one, I bet. Yeah, there's gonna be
What are you trying to do, Corey?
the re-enrollment to not allow for re-enrollment.
So you have to turn it off and turn it back on.
Oh, that's why we don't see it, that's right.
You can do that, though, it's fine.
I'm not gonna mess it up.
Oh, well,
Yeah.
you guys are not.
No, we're not gonna do that. I'm not gonna mess up all your hard work.
Yeah.
But there's a re-enrollment where you can prevent them, that once they've been in there, it doesn't keep sending them, or, because if you put the re-enrollment in there, the moment they exit, they automatically go back to the top as long as they're on that active list.
Okay.
So you just turn that re-enrollment off, unless there's a reason you want them on.
Oh, okay. So, do they unenroll them, or, sorry?
It depends,
So they
on.
could opt out, of like not.
Yeah, there are, you could have an opt-out. There's a number of ways to opt out. It could be that they opt out of an email type, because your emails, the automated emails get sent as a certain type. You could have them take a certain action, like fill out a form and they answer a certain way. Then you can have that as a goal met, or an if-then branch that automatically then ends the workflow for them. So yeah, there's a number of ways you can pull someone out. So I talked a little bit about the sales sequences. The sales sequences are designed as a one-to-one email automation, where I can send someone emails over the course of time from me personally. And by default, there are two ways that people get out of those. Either they hit reply, so I get a reply back, or two, they schedule an appointment with me. And so I don't even have to program those in. Those automatically exist, because it's presumed that a salesperson's primary goal is to have some sort of interaction, right? Now, the disadvantage is if it's an automated reply because they're out of office, it pulls them out of the workflow. But that's how it's designed. It's designed that when I get a notification back, I don't want to send them now another automated one saying, hey, I didn't hear from you 2 weeks ago when I sent the last email. So it's designed to pull them out. On the marketing side, we have to decide how we're going to pull them out. We let it run through to the end, or what?
Does that spark any questions, Skylar?
I'd say maybe just two best practices is, one, to use folders, because there's folders within the workflow tool that we can organize by like what types of workflows they are. So like I have a client delight folder, we have a sales folder, we have a content down.
It could be a code, like a certain two-letter code that means that everybody knows what it means. It could be a word. I don't know why
That's all I really have to say.
yeah.
Being smart about your naming and your organization to make sure that everyone within your organization knows what those things do, in case you're ever not there anymore, so. Yeah, okay.
All right, so that is everything you wanted to know about workflows, and then some.
But if you have more questions, you and
Yeah, I was like,
No,
that was a
no,
good
no
one.
more.
No more.
That's it.
Hey.
That's all you get.
Well, she's saying for onboarding, so.
But I do think that, you know, the way Katie has kind of started thinking about it from a whiteboard perspective, you may just
Yeah.
want to come and just brainstorm of, just come up with what you want it to do, and then,
You can
either.
tell me, no, do
Yeah.
it this way.
Yeah, totally.
So different people are gonna think about it different ways. I like the idea of Post-it notes because I can move them around. Katie uses a whiteboard. Some people just do it on paper. Some people go straight into the tool. It really just comes down to what's the way that you can visualize it the best. And once you start, and really, I think what's gonna come down to is the way you start visualizing it is probably always gonna be the best, because it's what you're used to. So there's no one right way or one wrong way. It's just whatever makes sense for you.
Something new that I noticed today was that they've added an option for a clean up this workflow button. So based on like their automation, they can kind of guess like how to streamline it for you. And it doesn't work on all of them, because maybe there's not a way to actually streamline it, but for me, someone who overthinks and tries to put too many things in place to make sure it's right, and only those people that like meet that criteria go in there, like,
They're
it
like,
will-
whoa, okay.
yeah, relax, girl, you could have just done this, like.
One barista did it instead of 7.
Right, so, a kind of cool new feature they added to the workflow tool, I think it's
Yeah.
cool.
Yeah, I feel like I understand workflows a whole lot more than I did going into it,
Yeah.
so thank you.
Yeah, sometimes it's just about knowing what's possible,
Yeah.
and once you know what's possible, then you're.
Yeah, any way you could send me a picture of that workflow that you
Yeah,
had?
totally.
So I can, okay,
Some inspiration.
yeah, just to go off of it.
Totally. And they also have a, like, kind of system in place to share, like, at-risk workflows, or, so if, like, someone is unable to fulfill, or, like, go through that workflow for whatever reason, it'll tell you, like, hey, this person got stuck in this workflow, you might want to double check and make sure it's working as it should be. So there's a little, like, red dot next to all your at-risk workflows, so it's good to check in on from time to time.
And workflows that don't have any use.
Yeah.
That aren't being used at all, so you can clean up and delete them if it's appropriate. It's one of those things that's really easy over the course of years to just stop using something and forget that it's there. You think, oh, I'm gonna remember because I'm building all these, yeah, you won't remember.
It would be nice to be able to forget about stuff that have set in place. That means
Just quick
doing
story
my
on
good job.
workflows he built in 2019 that are in our portal.
I guarantee I won't remember any of those from 4 or 5 years ago.
Well, that's cool. A whole nother employee that you just
Mm-hmm.
put into the computer, right?
That's right.
Yeah, especially like when you have small teams, it's just so helpful.
Yeah,
Like, I don't have time for this, you just automate this.
VRT needs like 5 people more than
Yeah.
per person.
I hear ya.
Yeah,
If this can help, this
Yeah,
can
I
be
will
great.
give you one bit of advice from a creating automation perspective. And that is, think first about how you would do it manually. So if I had to go through and create a 90-day onboarding automation, think first of what would happen if I just did it. So pretend, okay, today is day 2. What am I doing today? Write that down. Now today is day 15. What am I doing? Do that. And whatever those steps are. And am I making a decision on, am I sending something based on one thing versus another? And if you start just kind of think about it in terms of what do I do manually, or taking an existing manual process, that I think makes it a lot easier, regardless of the method of organization. I think if you just kind of pretend you're in the moment of that next step, I think that the automation process is a whole lot easier.
Yeah. Yeah. Cool.
All right. Is that it? Christmas?
That's it.
Cool,
That's
cool.
all I got.
Awesome.
I mean, I just talked for an hour, so I'm sure you want.
All right, well, thanks, Skylar. If you have any questions, feel free to just email them over.
Sorry we couldn't hear you. Okay.
All right. Well, thank you all.
Well, as you have other questions, you do have to cross 2 streets, but we're not far.
I'll cross them and be like, hey.
Except for Friday.
Yeah, I was like, we've got a meeting on Thursday, I'm gonna work on some stuff, maybe. Oh, what are we working on? That's list.
Lists, forms,